Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Santos. I am currently in my last semester of historical undergraduate studies here at UTSA. Today, I will be discussing events that are relevant to the political landscape we experience in the present. These events are centered around the emergence of the First Red Scare, which took place during World War I and following the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in 1917. In particular, I will discuss how the first Red Scare may have been associated with a desire for more favorable working conditions in response to the rapid industrialization that the United States was undergoing. The successful, the successful revolution in Russia gave rise to the first openly communist constitutional government and was largely led by Vladimir Lenin. Although Karl Marx, who was one of the founders of the communist ideology, intended for the system to be accompanied by a democratic form of government, Russia implemented a totalitarian state that promoted communist values. Contrary to popular fallacies, it is important to understand that democracy and communism are not mutually exclusive or polar opposites. Democracy is understood as liberty for individuals, whereas communism is defined by collective ownership of society's resources and economic equality. Karl Marx believed that democracy was failing under capitalism because of the wealthy's extensive influence, which often impeded the voting rights of the working class. It was for this reason that exploitative labor practices ensued and the working class suffered from disenfranchisement, miseducation, and poverty. Marx promoted communism and socialism as methods to eliminate poverty and promote free education and universal health care. Karl Marx's ideas influenced Vladimir Lenin's revolution, although he did not establish a democracy as Marx had intended. After the revolution, Russia became known as the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR. The Bolshevik Revolution took place after the industrialization of America and struck fear into the bourgeoisie, who exploited their workers with low wages and extensive labor. In a capitalist society, it is well known that those who possess the most money also possess the most power. America's wealthy were given tax breaks and government pardons, and they virtually paid for legislation through lobbying tactics. As a result, the US government protected the interests of large corporations and ultimately cemented them into their own institutions, creating the idea that capitalism is inherently American. Moreover, the United States felt that its sovereignty was threatened by left-wing ideologies and tried to mitigate their diffusion altogether. Marxist ideas such as communism and socialism began to appeal to the working class of America, who worked tirelessly for low wages. Labor strikes and unionizing increased exponentially during the First World War and Bolshevik Revolution. The number of workers on strike reached an all-time high in 1917, and the number of workers on strike rose to over 4 million in 1919. These demonstrations were associated with communist ideologies because of their desire for better wages and working conditions. In 1919, tensions between protesters and the government reached their peak. From February 6 to February 11, 1919, 65,000 workers in Seattle stopped working altogether. This was followed by a series of anarchist-led bombings who attacked businesses and certain political figures in June 1919. The United States Attorney General, Alexander Palmer, then responded with a series of incursions known as the Palmer Raids, which lasted for years. About 250 Russian immigrants were deported, 5,000 citizens were arrested, and many homes were searched without regard to constitutional rights. During this time, the Sedition Act of 1918 was abused to limit the free speech of I'm sorry, ideological dissidents and paint them as terrorists or spies. After a series of legal pushbacks in the Supreme Court, Palmer deflected the allegations of unconstitutional action by proclaiming that there would be a left-wing revolution on International Workers' Day in May of 1920. Although there was never a revolution, several demonstrations occurred on May 1st, 1920, in order to protest against American involvement in Russia's Civil War and the conviction of Eugene Debs, a leader of the U.S. Socialist Party. When the revolution never happened, Palmer lost the support of various news outlets and other politicians. Lawyers also raised suspicion over the fact that many people were deported without evidence of espionage or terrorist affiliations. Many people believe that Palmer was unjustly targeting union laborers as communists or terrorists because of their desire for higher pay and better working conditions. This demonstrated the government's negligence, as they did not make a considerable effort to improve these working conditions in order to appease the people. It seemed as though they wanted to silence communists and labor unions all at once, killing two birds with one stone. The Supreme Court case, Shent versus the United States, upheld the constitutionality of the Sedition and Espionage Acts. So this would continue throughout the 20th century and into the Second Red Scare, which occurred during the Cold War. The first Red Scare essentially established the United States' position against communism, socialism, anarchism, and far-left ideologies in general. It foreshadowed a series of anti-communist interventions throughout the world, and especially in Asia, Europe, and Latin America. Communism and socialism remain frowned upon in the present day because of the fallacies spread about them and the negative connotations America has created for them. U.S. government agencies such as the CIA and FBI would facilitate the overthrow of various Marxist governments and assassinated American activists who promoted socialist ideas. This includes, but is not limited to, Fred Hampton, Martin Luther King Jr., and Malcolm X. I chose this topic because my family worked and marched with many American socialist leaders, and I look to follow in their footsteps by educating more people about a system that would benefit the people rather than the top 1%. However, the United States truly hates free thinkers and those who yearn for economic equality, universal health care, and free education. This lesson of history is important to us all, because if one of us were to gain enough influence and perpetuate such ideologies, we could be next on their hit list. Hopefully, I live long enough to experience our country become smarter and adopt socialist ideologies rather than enforce our own oppression. And here's a list of my works cited.